Hi guys, it's David here from Right On Resources, and today we're going to be having a look at a poetry quiz to help you with the WJEC Eduqas Poetry Anthology. So it might be that you're studying this at the moment, or you might be preparing for your exams next year. These are just going to be a few simple games and activities to do to help reaffirm your understanding of the poems in that anthology. So in round one, you'll need to be able to recall contextual information. If you're not too sure what we mean by that, context is the information surrounding the poem or the poet that impacts our understanding of what we're actually being told in the poem. So on the next few slides, you'll see contextual information relating to the poets you've been studying. In this quiz, you'll need to work as a team to work out who the poet is. If you're able to, it might be fun to work with someone else who's going through the similar kind of poetry that you have to be studying as well. Try not to refer to the notes in your anthology. Again, this should be something you use as a little quiz, a little bit of a assessment on how well you understand the poem so far. Answer all the questions in the allotted time. So obviously in this video, you're more than welcome to pause it at any point, spend a bit more time, and just try to think next time when you come back to the video, try to do it in a quicker amount of time if possible. And the last one, keep track of your score. So this will help to keep track of how well you're doing and help with the overall plan that you're going to see at the end of the video. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. So the first round is going to be guess the poet. Okay, so based on these bits of information, you need to work out who the poet is. Okay, so this should be based on the contextual information you would have studied in your normal lessons. So I am the first female poet laureate in 400 years. So have a think back to all the different poets that you're aware of. Which one might that apply to? Again, if you need to pause the video and think about it in a bit more time, you're more than welcome to do so. I've got two more clues before I'm going to reveal who the poet is in question. So clue number 2. Many of my poems reflect a realistic view on everyday issues. Okay, and final clue. I wrote a poem about an injury sustained by David Beckham. So for those of you that aren't aware, David Beckham is or was a famous footballer, and this poet, the poet in question, wrote a poem about an injury that he sustained. Again, if you'd like to pause the video, try and work it out for yourself, then you're more than welcome to do so now. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to reveal who the poet is. So hopefully you guys would have been able to figure out who it was. It is, of course, Carol Ann Duffy, a very, very modern poet and someone who is featured very heavily, not just in your anthology, but also in the unseen section of the exam. Okay, moving on. Okay, so now we're moving on to look at our next poet. So the first clue, I was encouraged to continue to write poetry by Siegfried Sassoon. So hopefully you might have heard of this poet before. He was very prominent during a certain period of British history. My poem gives an honest account of a tragic period within history. Again, so if any of you do study history, think about some of the events that have really gripped the nation, ones that are still kind of held in our memory today. Hopefully you would have figured out that it's Wilfred Owen, and there was our final clue there at the end. I spoke out about the treatment of people like me while others were sat in luxury. So Wilfred Owen, of course, is an extremely famous poet, probably the most famous one of World War I as well. Okay, so third one then, guessing the poet. I am married to a writer. Clue number 2. The tone of my poem suggests that I am daydreaming. So think about when we say the tone, we mean the mood or the atmosphere that's created while reading the poem. So think about one that has that kind of far away, distant kind of tone that we normally associate with someone daydreaming. And clue number 3. My poem occurs during a difficult time for many Americans. So the poet is American and he's speaking about a difficult time within America. Again, if you'd like to pause the video, please feel free to do so. I'm now going to reveal who the poet is. Hopefully you would have been able to have figured it out. It's of course Rita Dove. Okay, so moving on, we'll look at another poet now. So the poem that he wrote, or she wrote, is written in 3-line stanzas. For those of you that aren't aware, when we refer to stanzas, we mean essentially a paragraph in a poem. The poet in question grew up in Wales. And our third and final clue. The poem describes an event that had 4,000 casualties. So if you'd like to pause the video now and have a think, you're more than welcome to do so. I'm going to go ahead and reveal the poet in question. So it is, of course, Owen Shears. Okay, moving on. So the next one. My poem was originally aired on Channel 4. Again, so just from that you can probably figure out it's quite a contemporary poem. I was appointed Poet Laureate on the 10th of May 2019. Third and final clue. The poem looks at conflict, injury and PTSD. And if you're not sure what we mean by PTSD, it's an extremely important theme within this poem. It means post-traumatic stress disorder, and it is something that is often felt by people who went through serious events such as war or being attacked. So the poem in question, of course, is Simon Armitage, again a very, very important poet, one that comes up time and time again in the exams, not just in the anthology section, but also in the unseen section of the test. Okay, so now we're moving on to round 2. In this round, you'll need to recall key quotations from the poems in your anthology. This is an extremely important thing to practice for the exam. You won't have all the poems in front of you, so it's important that you constantly come back and revisit this and make sure you're aware of the key quotations in the poems. So on the next few slides, you'll see key quotations from the poems in your anthology, and in this round, you need to recall as many quotations as possible. Again, the higher amount of quotes you can remember, the better this is going to be for you. Work out all the missing parts of each quotation. So you will see a part of a quote and there'll be a few keywords missing out. So you need to figure out what are the missing elements. And work as a team to work out the full quotes. Your notes in your anthology shouldn't be used. So again, if you can work with someone else who is going through and trying to revise similar kind of things as yourself, this will help you just to remain focused and on task as well. And the last one, keep track of your score, as you'll need this at the end. What it will do is you'll collate all of your scores from each round and you'll understand how well you're doing or how well you understand the poems that we've looked at today. If we have a look at the stretch and challenge task there, you can earn extra points by identifying the correct poem for each quote. Okay, so again, if you want to go back over any of these and want to try it again, please feel free to do so. They're really good things just to have a go at and just to get that bit of extra practice and revise. Okay, so the first one then. So we're about to see a quotation with a few of the words missing out. You need to figure out what is missing from that quotation. So it says, I could pick anything and blank, blank, blank. So there are 3 words that need to go in there. So have a good think about all the different poems that you've looked at. Think about what quote this might be referring to. If you're not sure, if you'd like to discuss it with your partner, please feel free to pause the video now. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to reveal the answer. So this quotation actually comes from Cozy Apologia, and the full quote is, I could pick anything and think of you. Again, very key quotation talking about the themes within the poem and the relationship between the poet and the person she's actually directing the poet towards. Okay, number 2. So here's the quotation. Only then would he let me trace the something something which ran through his something. Okay, so very important quotation. There's 3 possible words that could go into the spaces. If you need a minute, take a minute, pause the video, try and work out what the correct answer is. Okay, I'm going to reveal the answer now. So hopefully you would have been able to figure it out. The full quotation is, only then would he let me trace the frozen river which ran through his face. And that is, of course, from The Manhunt. And this is a really important quotation, especially when you think about the theme of war and the relationship between the wife and the soldier that's talked about in here, and that fantastic metaphor there of it being a frozen river that's actually carving the scar that runs through his face. Okay, moving on. Okay, so number 3. This is the quotation. It's central something to your fingers. Blank to your blank. So three possible words that could go in that space there as well. Okay, I'm going to reveal the answers now, so if you need a bit more time, feel free to pause the video. Its scent will cling to your fingers, cling to your knife, which of course is Valentine by Carol Ann Duffy. Again, this is a very important quotation. These are by no means all of the quotes that you need to know, but these are still some of them that are quite helpful and will help you in the exam. Okay, so now we're going to look at the next quotation. As if the blank they had blank have only now, with this unearthing, slipped from their blank blank. So again, if you want to pause the video here, you want to spend a bit of time working out what's missing from the quote, by all means do so. I'm going to go ahead and reveal the answer. So the full quotation is, as if the notes they had sung have only now, with this unearthing, slipped from their absent tongues. It's quite long in terms of a quotation there, but it's an important one to know because it covers a lot of the key themes that are present in the poem. Next one. So, bent double like something something under sacks, knock-kneed, coughing, blank blank. So think you've got 4 things to figure out, 4 spaces to fill up. If you need a bit of extra time, pause the video. I'm going to go ahead and reveal the answer for this one. So it was, of course, bent double like old beggars under sacks, knock-kneed, coughing like hags, from WJEC Eduqas by Wilfred Owen. Again, an extremely important quotation to remember. A lot of things you could use there in terms of analysis as well. You've got a lot of imagery and also that fantastic simile there that helps give us that idea of just how hard it was for people during that war. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the third and final round of the quiz. So in this round, you will need to respond to some unconventional quick-fire questions. So these questions are going to be ones that you probably wouldn't have heard within your normal lessons, but it's just there to kind of test your understanding of the poems and the poets overall. Okay, so don't feel bad if you don't know them all off by heart. These are just to see where you're at generally. You'll only have a small amount of time to answer all 5 of the questions. So have a think about the rules for this one and try to work together if you can to get the best result. So on the next slide, you'll see 5 obscure questions relating to the poems we have looked at this quiz. In this round, you will need to answer the questions as quickly as possible. Again, it's a good idea to time yourself because we want to really think about how quickly do these things come to your head and how quickly you're able to actually bring these things to apply to real life questions. Work together to figure out each answer. Your notes again shouldn't be used. Again, if you need to, anthologies are there for a reason. You've put a lot of notes in them for a reason. So if you're really forced, if you really have to, then you can use them as well. And the last one, keep your team's idea to yourself if you're playing it with a big group. Remember that this can be a quiz that you can use to play against each other, right? It's no reason why revision always has to be difficult and hard. Sometimes you can always have a little bit of fun with it if possible. Okay, so I'm going to go through the questions then. If you need some extra time, if you want to pause the slide at any point, feel free to do so. So number 1, which poem dismisses traditional signs of love? Number 2, which poem commemorates an engagement of the 38th Division of the British Army during the First Battle of the Somme? Number 3, which poem's title means a defence of coziness? Number 4, which poem was published posthumously in 1920? And number 5, the last one, which poem was linked to a documentary about military service people? So again, if you want to spend a bit of time thinking these through, discussing them with your partner, feel free to do so. I'm going to move ahead now and go straight to the answers. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and just look at the answers to the questions we just had a go at. So again, there are 5 key questions there. These are just there to test your general understanding of the poem. Again, if you wasn't sure about all of them, that's fine. You can always go back and try them again. Okay, so now that you've completed the quiz, you need to reflect on the areas that you need to improve. So we have, of course, had 3 different sections to this quiz. The first one was round 1, Guess the Poet. So this round was designed to test how much you can recall about the context surrounding the poems. So if you remember, the context means the social, political and historical factors that influence the writing of the poem. You'll work out your score and see how many you got out of 5. Round 2 was fill in the blanks. So if you remember, you had a number of different quotations. You had to figure out how well you were able to piece them together and recall key quotes in each poem. Again, marks out of 5. And the final one was the quickfire questions. This was just designed to see which poems you had an in-depth understanding of, really knew in and out, and really helps to kind of tie together your understanding of all the poems. So again, if you work out your marks out of 5, that will help you to understand what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and gives you a target to meet next time should you want to do the quiz again. Another thing you can do, set yourself a target for your future learning. Think about what areas might you need to spend some additional time revising. Now this of course isn't a fully covered quiz for all of the poems in your anthology, but there will be more coming shortly. If you're struggling with English or you want any extra help or support, please make sure that you like and subscribe our channel. We will have videos uploaded every single week to help and support you on your journey within education. Okay, thank you everyone and good luck in the future. Bye.